welcome to the Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Kenney Show. I am so excited to talk to you guys tonight. And here's the thing. Here's what's wicked funny. I started to record another podcast, and then right in the middle of it, I was like, nope, I want to go talk about this instead. That's how my spiritual team works. And I just take, instructions. I follow the guidance as it comes down. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually probably going to combine these two. I think that's kind of the solution of where I'm going to go with this. So today's title, here's what we're talking about today. Slowing down the asshole reflex. Slowing down the a-hole reflex. Oh my God, it's so good. And here's the thing. This title was inspired by somebody who is in the nest, my spiritual community and membership. And I'm like, oh my God, this is such a good story. And I want to share it with everybody. And here's the thing. I already shared it with the people who are on my email list. So if you are not on my email list, I just want to encourage you guys. It's wicked easy to do. If you want to stay in touch and get weekly inspiration, if you want to get these podcasts dropped right into your inbox on Thursday mornings, you can just go sign up. It's simply KarenKenney.com/sign up. It's wicked easy. So if you go and do that, then you too will be able to get things like goodness delivered right into your inbox. Otherwise, here's what this is all about. So one of the members of the nest, and I totally got their permission to share this story, by the way. Everything that happens in the nest stays in the nest, but this was something that we both agreed would be maybe helpful for other people, and I wanted to share it. So when I say slowing down the a-hole reflex, what I'm talking about is the way that we often react to other people, circumstances, and things in our lives, right? Being able to slow down, what I'm really saying is our reactions. So here's a little story. So I'm going to read it directly from this just because it's not my story to tell. It's somebody else's story. And I never want to misspeak or whatever. So this is what they were talking about. So, so much in the nest, the work that I do is about transforming your story to your glory, transforming these old ways of being, these old thinking patterns, these old behaviors, the stuff from our childhood, how we are the way that we are, why we are the way that we are. And when we start to recognize that we have these stories that we tell ourselves, I call it your BS, your beliefs in your stories, AKA your bullshit, that get in the way of love, that get in the way of our happiness and peace. And when we start to kind of recognize these patterns of behavior in ourselves, and they're often the ways that in the beginning kept us safe, but now in its own way, they keep us stuck or suffering, right? So we start to have this realization that something needs to shift, something needs to change. And so often though, when we're trying to uncondition ourselves, especially you guys, if we've been around for a long time, like me, right? I'm 52. It's it took a certain amount of thinking, behaving, believing, conditioning, whatever, for me to be who I am. And a lot of spiritual work isn't about becoming good or becoming more kind or becoming anything. It's really about letting all the stuff that blocks the truth of you, which is you are compassionate, you are good, you are kind, you are lovable and loving, and you are worthy. And we think we got to do all these gymnastics to become a thing, when really so much of this kind of personal development work, call it mindset work, spiritual work, right? The spiritual piece is important there, is about undoing, unconditioning a lot of false beliefs that we hold about ourselves, God, the divine, and each other and the world. Right? So in the nest, we end up talking a lot about transformation and tools of transformation and tools that we put in the spiritual toolkit. So that's where this story kicks off. And I'm now going to read it. So they were saying these are their words. Okay. Transformation is slow. And I think for me anyways, it can be like watching paint dry some days. And I wonder, is it happening? And how will I know? So yesterday I'm at this nursery buying plants and flowers, and I decide to bring my son, who can be a handful, and he wants to be helpful. And well, you know, he's ADHD and we don't medicate on the weekends. So he's 120% him. And I'm watching him and I'm answering his questions and taking plants out of my cart that we don't really need, that he thought we needed. So he's put in the cart, and I'm looking for my stuff all at the same time. So I don't find a plant I'm looking for. And I ask a woman at the front desk if they have these certain ferns. And she says, yes. And she tells me, you must have missed them. Look again. It's a short response, but she's probably right. There's a big chance I missed them. So I go back and I do find them. And when I check out, she says to me, see what happens when you actually look? And for some reason, I'm hit with laughter. So I laugh to her and I say, you're right. And this is a miracle, because the old me would have ripped her not just one new a-hole, but 3. But in a split second, I see my son and realize that her day is likely going to be less rewarding than mine will be. And it was easy to give her what she needed and to not care. So I know it's working. Giving myself more grace is giving me so much more grace for others. And it's like a bank to draw from. When I heard this story, when she was talking about this in the nest, I said to her, oh my God, can I please share this? Because this is such a powerful, concrete, like tangible representation of the power of spiritual work. And so often people are like trying to explain this work that I do with people one-to-one, right? Spiritual mentoring, and trying to talk about it. It can seem so intangible. So I love these kinds of stories because it helps me to explain the power of when we actually do spiritual work, when we take a moral inventory, when we take a look at ourselves and the choices we've made and who and how we are in the world, we can start to see, by taking time each day to have a DSP, a daily spiritual practice, when I take time each day to sit down and get quiet, when I sit down each day and I pray or I meditate or I chant or I use my mantra or I go in nature, right? Like the 1,000 ways we can connect to the gods of our own understanding. When we take this time to slow down the mind, oh my God, we can see the tangible results that happen. We actually slow down the asshole reflex, because that woman was short with her, right? That woman's like, basically giving her that attitude. Well, if you just fucking looked, like they were right there the whole time, right? And so many of us, and I know myself, right? Like in the past. So this is what I said back. I was saying, I responded immediately to MB, right? MB was the one who shared the story. And I said, yes, one of the added benefits. This is what she said. Let me finish the story. She said, giving myself more grace is giving me so much more grace for others. It's like a bank to draw from. In meditation, it's slowing down the a-hole reflex so I can choose to make the withdrawal. In meditation, it's slowing down the asshole reflex. This is such a huge thing. So I responded to her and I said, yes, one of the added benefits of meditation and a DSP, a daily spiritual practice, is definitely slowing down and sometimes even stopping the a-hole reflex, or what I like to call the masshole reaction, which is what you get from Vicky with 2Ks from Lawrence. So I wanted to encourage them, and I did. I encouraged them to keep trusting this process of this work we do, to keep trusting their own daily spiritual practice in the meditation, because we can see it at work in our lives. I share this with you guys because if you find yourself doing repetitive behaviors, meaning you're speaking from your wound rather than your wisdom, that you're showing up in the world from a place of pain instead of your peace, that you're moving from your old story instead of living in your glory. If you find that you can't, choose how you want to respond. And this is the difference. This is my whole point about the a-hole reflex, is that if you can actually choose to respond from a place of love versus reacting from a place of fear, that asshole reflex of like, you're not going to talk to me that way. Yeah. You're going to be short with me. You're going to be short with me. Like, that attitude of attack, defend, prove. That attitude of, I got to move through the world with my dukes up. I got to be right because I'd rather be right than happy. And when she said in the story, I could let her have what she needed. And apparently what that woman needed in that moment was to be a little short and to be able to slow down enough to see what is actually happening in the moment, to recognize that this other person, as we say in A Course in Miracles, people are either showing love or they're crying out for love. They're either extending love and showing love, or they are crying out for love. They are crying out for help. And clearly that woman in that moment could not extend the love. She couldn't show the love. So she had to be short, and she had to be snippy, and she had to be right, and she had to be sarcastic and make a comment to a customer. And so to have the ability to be MB and to realize like, oh, I can choose how I want to respond. I don't have to rip one new a-hole, never mind 3, right? I mean, what a glorious thing to be able to slow down so we can actually choose how we respond, because otherwise we are a prisoner. Otherwise we are being held hostage by the ego. Otherwise, we are just repeating the traumatized patterns and behaviors often that we learned in our childhood. So these things, if you listen to the last episode I did, or 2 episodes ago, I think with Linda Ty, the trauma therapist, the somatic therapist, about how our bodies hold our stories and how these trauma responses get passed down to us. We learn how to move through the world. I often say, like, try to move through the world with nothing to attack, defend, or prove. And so if we take time each day, preferably in the morning, to start our day right, like what I often say is divine connection before Wi-Fi connection. Go in and go up before you go out. Go online to the divine before you go on to the interwebs, before you start interacting out in the world with other people, whether it's face-to-face or on Zoom or on social media. If we can align our mind with the divine, so we can slow down, so we can become more conscious of how we're holding our body, how we're breathing, how we're feeling, how we're thinking, we can actually stop the mass hole reaction or the a-hole reflex. And in that moment is when the healing actually happens, when we recognize, oh, this shit is working. I'm actually able to choose how I want to show up and how I want to be in the world rather than being tossed around, being at the mercy of our need, to be right and to react. And there's a difference between reacting and responding. And to respond means, I always say, like, think of the word responsible. We are responsible for the shit that comes out of our mouths, but it's also right within that word is we are response able. We have the ability to respond. And I love when people start to see, the benefits of their hard work. It's not like you sit down one day to meditate and then all of a sudden you're like Mother Teresa or Jesus Christ himself, right? This stuff is it takes time, you guys, to be able to create new synapses in the mind, new wiring in the mind, to be able to move just out of the reaction of the ego mind and drop down into the heart so that we can actually choose how we want to represent ourselves. Because if we don't have control over that a-hole reflex, we end up paying the consequences of being ourselves. And I don't mean our true selves, but our reactionary selves, our fearful selves. And so I wanted to share this story with you because maybe you have a story like this too. Maybe you can relate or resonate or start to realize like, oh, I actually didn't know that I had a choice. I remember like where and how I grew up. There is no way back in the day that I would let somebody get away with talking to me like that. I would feel like I had to respond in kind, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You hit me, I hit you back harder, because that was the language of my people. Like that's where I came from, right? And now I realize it's like, oh, I can appeal to, what do they say? The angels of my higher nature, my spiritual team. And I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to feel like I've been attacked. Somebody else having a shitty day and trying to projectile vomit it onto me. Right? I'm not saying be a doormat. Nobody's saying like just sign up for abuse. But if we're able to stand back and have compassion and recognize what is happening, oh, this person actually needs my help right now. They need my kindness and compassion right now. And if I can separate my ego away from this and being like, who are you to talk to me like that, right? And we can say like, oh, this person is clearly suffering. And the insight that MB had was she looked at her son and then looked at this woman and realized like, you know, even with the challenges, right, of his 80, him being at 120%, she could recognize like what a gift he is. And that my day is probably going to go better than hers. And you guys, here's the thing. I don't want you moving through the world having all these regrets. Things that you said that you can't take back. Things that you did that like, you know, still haunt you. And we cannot build a better past, they say, in 12-step programs, right? It was what it was. But we can right now start to make choices that is going to build and create your future. So this is the laws of karma. I always say karma, like everybody's like, it's so woo, oh, karma. Like, I'm like, it's really science in a lot of ways, which is every action has an equal, right, reaction. So whatever, that's why they're talking about like in manifestation and all the different stuff that they talk about. It's like you try to put out into the world what you actually want. You try to, like when Gandhi said, or whoever said, right? Gandhi gets attributed to it, but I saw somebody recently say, did he really say that? To be the change that you want to see in the world, we have to be the living, breathing representative of how we want to be treated. And that is not always an easy muscle to flex. I think it's way easier to be lippy and sarcastic and snide and kind of kind of a dick back. That's easy. It takes a strong person. And I'm not saying sign up for verbal abuse. I don't mean that. We all have our different points, right? We have to know. But here's the other thing. How can we know when it's really appropriate, the who, the when, the right time, if we can't slow down our mind enough to actually make a choice? So if we always already have our dukes up, it's way easier to come out swinging at somebody rather than to have that moment of awareness where like, oh, seems like you're having a bad day, and cutting people a little slack for when they're clumsy. Rather than being a total masshole like Vicky with 2Ks, who's always got something to say, right? So it's one of those things, you guys, where I hope this is a nice short and sweet episode. I just wanted to share that story and to let you know that we always have. I shouldn't say always, right? There's obviously, you know, I'm trying to be wicked mindful of my language, like always, never, must, have to, shoulds, all those things, right? We almost always, because sometimes you might be out of your mind, high on drugs or drunk or whatever, but we almost always have the capacity to be able to choose how we want to respond. And I just think if you're somebody who does have a lot of guilt or shame or regret or whatever in your past, we can't fix that, but we can change how and who we are moving forward. So let's represent ourselves. I often say to people, like, you are a child of God. Let's start acting like it. And what I mean by that is, like, let's not be, it's not talking about being all pious and righteous and better than and all this stuff. I don't mean that. What I mean by that is, like, recognize who you are, the love that you come from. Can you guys hear the turkeys outside? They're so loud right now. I don't know if you can pick them up in the recording. It's so crazy. They're up in the trees talking to me. So here's the thing, you guys. If you want to be able to slow down the a-hole reflex, your own a-hole reflex, I implore you to consider starting a DSP, a daily spiritual practice. Like I always say, divine connection before Wi-Fi connection. Do not get on your phone first thing in the morning. Do not have that be the first thing that you do. If you can, create some quiet time where you can sit down. You can just start with 5 minutes of meditation. You don't have to start at like 20 minutes or an hour or 45 minutes, but just start with 5 minutes to get your mind right, to align with the divine, to align with that highest part of you, the one who knows who you are. Because when you know who you are, you don't feel like you have to walk around attacking, defending, proving, being right, giving lip back, whatever. We don't have to meet hate with hate or attack with attack. We can recognize what's really happening and we can laugh. That was the great part of that story is MB started to laugh. And that never would have been possible before. The time and the commitment into changing that old conditioning, the old one who would have ripped somebody 3 new a-holes. I love saying a-holes. It just makes me laugh so hard, you guys. I'm trying to be like an adult right now, and I just keep wanting to giggle like wicked hard. So here's the thing, you guys. You too can slow down the a-hole reflex. We just have to develop that muscle. But look, I'm telling you right now, if I can do it, man, because I move through the world. I used to move through the world with my dukes up at such a high level. I was so terrified of being wrong because I was so afraid that if I got found out that I blew something or I made a mistake or I was wrong or I was whatever, that I would not be lovable, that I would be left, that I would be abandoned, like all these things. And so if I can like retrain my mind, if I can slow down enough, me who loves to talk really fast and move really fast, if I can slow down enough, I'm telling you, there is hope for all of us, right? So just thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you guys so much. I love you so much. If you already heard this story in the newsletter, if you're on my newsletter, I hope you enjoyed hearing it again. There are some things I just don't think that we can hear enough. And really the biggest point I'm trying to make is that we have a choice. We can choose how we want to respond. We can choose to meet things, difficult things, hard things, sometimes unkind things, with love. I'm not talking about when you're in a dangerous situation, right? Like, use your common sense. I think you know what I mean here, but people, especially, where we've been these past 18 months, right? It's been tough times for a lot of people. And as we're about to start to move more back out into the world, I mean, we're still going to keep doing this. Like, videos are going to keep happening, right? Meeting over Zoom, all those things are going to keep happening. But as we start to move back out into the world, people have been like really traumatized these past 18 months. People's patience isn't as much, right? Like, somebody was telling me the other night, that they shared or posted something online, and it was a really positive thing. And they got so much flack from people. And I stood back and I looked at that and I was like, oh yeah, people are really still struggling. And we can't control what other people are doing, but we can control how we choose to show up and how we choose to self-represent. So I believe in you guys, and I know what's possible when you do it. And there's 1,000 different ways to meditate, whether it's passage meditation, Vipassana meditation, following your breath, repeating a mantra. Like I said, just do your homework. Find a way that works for you. And sometimes just getting very still and getting very quiet. And even if you have to bring your mind back to the present moment 100 times, it will be time well spent. Because we're learning to train the mind to be where we want it to be. We learn to place it where we want to place it so that we can choose who and how we want to be in the world. To me, there is no greater thing, I think, than to be able to place your mind and your attention where you really want it. And we can place our attention on, this person's kind of being a dick to me and I got to retaliate. Or we can place our mind on love and to try to see the goodness in people, even when they can't see it in themselves, even when they're struggling. I think it was Mother Teresa who used to say, people don't need your judgment or your contempt. What they need is your love. So here's our invitation to do that. So, me, I always love to hear a good story. So if you have found yourself able to slow down the a-hole reflex in your life because you've started to do some personal development work, you started a DSP and you've been doing some spiritual work, I always love to hear that stuff. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week or whenever you're listening to this sucker. And again, if you're not on my email list yet, I would love to have you join. It's just KarenKenney.com/sign up. This is when you find out all the shenanigans I'm up to, when the nest is opening again, what kind of events or whatever I might have going on. So I'd love to have you join, part of the family, part of the community. So come on over and do that. And you guys, wherever you go out in the world, as the world is starting to open up more, please be safe, of course, but please leave the people, the place, the animals, and the environment better than how you found it. That's exactly what MB was doing in this story. Oh, leaving that woman better than how she found her. Amen. Double amen. Hands to that and hallelujah. So wherever you go, leave the people, place, animals, and environment better than how you found them. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days. And let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KENNEYLIVE. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.